The knife gleamed under the fluorescent lights as Elena pressed it against the throat of the most dangerous man in Busan. "Move," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And I swear to God, I'll make sure you never walk out of here." Dante Choi, the man they called the Frost King, the man whose name made grown criminals weep, didn't flinch. He just stared at her with those cold, dead eyes that had watched men die without blinking. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To understand how a 28-year-old restaurant owner ended up threatening a crime lord with a kitchen knife, we need to go back 3 hours. Back to when Elena Park thought her biggest problem was a broken dishwasher and not enough customers to pay rent. Elena Park was closing Phoenix Kitchen when 6 men walked in like they owned the world. Maybe they did. The restaurant went silent, that awful kind of silence where even breathing feels too loud. The 5 men in suits spread out naturally, covering exits, but it was the 6th one who made Elena's survival instincts scream. He was beautiful, in the way a knife is beautiful. Tall, muscular build evident even through the expensive black suit, long black hair pulled back in a low ponytail, and tattoos crawling up his neck like dark vines. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart, cold, empty, like looking into a frozen lake and seeing nothing beneath the ice. "We're closed," Elena said, but her voice betrayed her. The man, Dante Choi, though she didn't know his name yet, tilted his head slightly. "You have food, you have a kitchen, you're open." It wasn't a question. It was a fact he'd decided, and the universe would bend to make it true. Before we go further, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens in the next 60 seconds changes everything. Trust me. Elena's grandmother used to say the Park women had fire in their blood. It made them terrible at backing down and worse at staying quiet. So when Dante and his 5 enforcers sat down at her best table like conquering kings, something hot and reckless woke up in Elena's chest. She cooked for them because what choice did she have? Bulgogi that melted on the tongue, kimchi jjigae that could wake the dead, japchae with vegetables she'd bought fresh that morning. She plated everything on her grandmother's hand-painted ceramic dishes. The ones that were irreplaceable, the ones that held 40 years of memory. The men ate like wolves. They talked about broken bones and burned businesses and people who'd learned not to cross them. And Dante sat at the head of the table, saying nothing, just watching his men with those dead eyes. Then one of the enforcers, a thick-necked man with scarred knuckles, reached carelessly across the table. His hand swept out, and Eleanor watched in horror as her grandmother's favourite plate tumbled off the edge. It shattered on the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The crane painted on the ceramic broke in half. The blue flowers scattered. 40 years of her grandmother's love and care became garbage in one careless second. The thick-necked man looked at the broken plate, then at Eleanor, and shrugged. Oops. Something inside Elena's chest cracked along with that plate. The men stood to leave. They walked past her like she was furniture, like they hadn't just destroyed something irreplaceable, like breaking things was so normal they didn't even register it anymore. And they didn't pay. Elena's grandmother used to tell her about a mouse that roared at a lion. The lion was so surprised, it actually stopped. That's the power of the powerless, her grandmother would say. Sometimes audacity is the only weapon you have. Eleanor planted herself in front of the door. You need to pay. The laughter started immediately. The thick-necked enforcer cracked his knuckles. Someone reached inside their jacket where Eleanor could see the outline of a gun. But Dante raised one hand. Just one hand. No words. And every man in that restaurant froze like he'd stopped time itself. He walked toward Eleanor slowly. Each step deliberate, measured. When he reached her, he was close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and cold, like winter made into fragrance. How much? His voice was soft, dangerous. 500,001. More than the meal. More than the plate if you measured in money. But how do you price memory? Dante pulled out his wallet with movements so controlled they looked choreographed. He counted bills slowly and dropped them on the table. 300,001. Not enough. That's all you're getting, he said quietly. Then he leaned in so close his breath stirred her hair. Learn to bend, little mouse. Stiff things break. He moved past her toward the door. His men followed. And that should have been the end. That should have been when Eleanor learned that some fires you don't poke, some people you don't challenge, some battles you can't win. But remember what I said about the park, women and fire? Cowards. Eleanor's voice rang out sharp and clear. You hide behind guns and money and expensive suits, but you're just cowards. You're no king. You're just another thief too scared to face anyone who doesn't fear you. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. The thick-necked enforcer turned with murder in his eyes, but Dante's hand shot out, stopping him. For 5 long seconds, Dante stood in the doorway with his back to Eleanor, completely still. When he turned around, his face was empty. No anger, no emotion, just cold calculation. And that was infinitely worse. He walked back slowly, stopped inches from Eleanor, studied her face like he was memorizing every detail for some future purpose. What's your name? Elena Park. Remember it. So when you come back, I'll know exactly who to charge extra. One of the men made a strangled sound, half laugh, half horror. Dante stared at her for 5 more seconds. Then he smiled, really smiled, showing teeth. And it was the most terrifying thing Elena had ever seen. You will, he said. Then he walked out into the rain. The moment the door closed, Elena's legs gave out. She collapsed into a chair, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. What had she done? What had she just done? But across the street, sitting in a black Mercedes with tinted windows, Dante was still smiling. His Lieutenant Marcus sat in the driver's seat, looking nervous. Should I make arrangements, sir? Marcus asked carefully. Dante was quiet, watching Elena through the rain-streaked window as she knelt on the floor collecting pieces of broken ceramic, tears streaming down her face. No, Dante finally said. Not yet. Sir, she disrespected you in front of the entire crew. I know what she did. Dante's voice was soft but sharp enough to cut. And I want to understand why. Why what? Why she's not afraid. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She lay in her tiny apartment above the restaurant, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of breaking glass or footsteps or gasoline being poured. She'd heard the stories about the Frost King. Everyone in Busan had. They said he controlled half the city's underground. They said he'd killed his first man at 16. They said he was beautiful and brutal and completely without mercy. They said a lot of things. None of them included how to survive after calling him a coward to his face. The next morning her phone started ringing. The fish supplier. Eleanor, I'm so sorry, but we can't deliver anymore. Her heart sank. Mr. Kim, we've worked together for 5 years. Family emergency, have to close shop. He hung up. 10 minutes later, the vegetable vendor called. Then the rice supplier. Then the meat distributor. One by one, every supplier she'd worked with for years suddenly had emergencies, sudden closures, unavoidable circumstances. This was the Frost King's hand, invisible but everywhere. Not violence, something more elegant. Economic strangulation, whispers in the right ears, pressure in the right places. If you're still watching, drop a like right now and subscribe, because what Elena does next is either the bravest or stupidest thing you've ever seen. Eleanor didn't close, didn't run. She took out a small loan from a bank that didn't ask questions, bought a bicycle and a cart, and every morning at 4 a.m., she rode across the city to markets where Dante's influence couldn't reach. She bought what she could, loaded her cart, rode back, and opened Phoenix Kitchen at 8 a.m. Exactly. It was exhausting, expensive, completely unsustainable. But it was hers. Customers stopped coming anyway. The ones who did approach would get phone calls right as they reached for the door. They'd listen, faces going pale, and leave without looking back. Eleanor cooked anyway. Full meals every day. she'd sit alone eating them, refusing to admit defeat. Then came the vandalism. She arrived one morning to find red paint splashed across her storefront, a crown frozen in ice, the mark of Dante's organization. Everyone in the neighborhood would know. This place was cursed. Stay away or suffer. Eleanor scrubbed it off, hands bleeding. The next morning it was back. She cleaned it again. It appeared again. This went on for a week. No sleep, no customers, no money. Just the grinding pressure of isolation and the constant terror that tonight would be the night they came with something worse than paint. But here's what Dante didn't understand. Eleanor had already survived the worst thing that could happen. Her parents died when she was 12. Her grandmother raised her in this restaurant, taught her to cook, taught her that food was love made solid. When her grandmother died 2 years ago, Elena had to learn to exist in a world that felt empty. You can't break someone who's already been shattered and learn to live with their pieces. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Elena was cleaning tables at closing time when the door opened. She didn't look up. "We're closed." "That's unfortunate. I was hoping for dinner." Eleanor's head snapped up. Dante stood in her doorway. Alone this time. No guards, no obvious weapons. Just him in another perfectly tailored suit, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine ad for beautiful, dangerous men. Elena's hand found the knife under the counter, the big one. The one for breaking down chickens and occasionally threatening rats. "Get out!" "Or what?" Genuine curiosity in his voice. "Or I'll give you a scar to remember me by." She moved fast, crossed the distance between them before he could react, and pressed the blade against his throat. Not hard enough to cut, just hard enough to make a point. Dante went completely still. "Are you going to do it? Are you going to kill me, Elena Park?" Maybe. But they both knew she wouldn't. She wasn't a killer, just a woman with a knife and a death wish. "Put the knife down," Dante said, gentle like suggesting they have tea. "Why? So your men can kill me faster?" "I don't have any men with me. I told you I came alone." "Why?" "Because I wanted to talk, and I thought if I brought guards you might not be honest." Eleanor laughed harshly. "Honest? You've destroyed my business, isolated me, marked my restaurant like it's diseased. And you want an honest conversation?" "Yes." The simple answer threw her off. The knife wavered. "Why won't you leave?" Dante asked quietly. "Any rational person would have closed this place and moved on. But you're still here, every morning, cooking for ghosts. Why?" Eleanor's throat tightened. "Because the moment I walk away, I lose more than a building. This restaurant is all I have left of my family. My grandmother fed this neighborhood when people were starving. She taught me that food isn't just sustenance, it's love, memory, home. You can burn this place down, but you cannot make me abandon who I am." Her voice broke. "I will not disappoint her memory. I'd rather die." The words hung between them, raw and true. Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Everyone has a price. Name yours." "My price is your absence. Leave me alone." "What if I can't?" The question was so unexpected that Eleanor actually looked at him, really looked, for the first time. His expression was strange, conflicted, almost vulnerable. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, Dante carefully reached up and moved the knife away from his throat. Not forcefully, just gently, like handling something fragile. Then he walked past her and sat down at one of her tables. "I've been thinking about you for 3 weeks," he said to the empty restaurant. "Every single day. I know your schedule. I know you take 2 buses to buy groceries. I know you cry sometimes when you cook your grandmother's recipes. I know more about you than I've ever known about anyone, and I still don't understand you." Eleanor stood frozen, knife forgotten. "You've been watching me." "Obsessively." No shame in the admission. "At first I told myself it was strategic. Know your enemy." But that's a lie. The truth is I can't stop thinking about the woman who called me a coward, who looked at me without fear or greed, just anger. Pure, honest anger because I broke something she loved. He turned to face her. Do you know how rare that is? In my world, everyone wants something. Everyone's calculating. But you told me exactly what you thought. You didn't care about consequences. You were just real. That doesn't give you the right to ruin my life. I know. Dante stood and walked toward her slowly. That's why I'm here, to understand why I did it, to understand why the thought of you leaving makes me feel something I haven't felt in 10 years. What? Fear. The word landed like a stone in still water. Comment below if you think Eleanor should trust him or run, because what happens next will change both their lives forever. Dante stopped in front of her, close but not touching. I need to tell you something, and don't interrupt. Elena nodded, heart hammering. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've hurt people, killed people, destroyed lives because it was profitable or necessary, or just convenient. I've built everything on fear and violence, and I'm not sorry for most of it because it kept me alive. He paused. But then you happened, and suddenly I'm questioning everything, like whether strength always has to be loud, whether there's something worth protecting besides myself. And I don't know what to do with these questions. Elena's throat was tight. She should pull away, should remember this man tried to destroy her. But instead she heard herself say, "You're asking the wrong question. What's the right one? Not how do I be something different, but who do I want to become?" She met his eyes. You can't change what you've done, but you can change what you do next. And what if I want to be someone who deserves to sit at your table without you wondering when I'll hurt you again? The rawness in his voice made tears prick her eyes. Then be that person, one choice at a time. They stood like that, inches apart, the restaurant quiet around them. Then Dante did something that shocked them both. He took her hand, the one still holding the knife, and brought it to his lips, kissed her knuckles gentle as prayer. "Thank you," he whispered. He left without another word. And Elena stood in her empty restaurant, staring at the hand he'd kissed, feeling like the world had just tilted on its axis. The next morning, the phone calls started again. But this time, suppliers were apologizing, offering to resume business at a discount. By noon, 3 regular customers had returned, nervous but present. Eleanor understood immediately. Dante had lifted his invisible hand. She was free, except she wasn't. Because that afternoon, a delivery arrived, expensive replacement dishes, and a note in elegant handwriting. For what was broken. D. Eleanor should have thrown them away, should have wanted nothing from him. But instead, she found herself running her fingers over the smooth ceramic, wondering what kind of man destroys you one day and tries to rebuild you the next. 2 days later, Dante came back. 8 p.m., right at closing. Alone again. "I'm here for dinner," he said simply. "I don't want your pity." "It's not pity, it's—" He searched for words. "A request. Let me eat here. Once a week. No guards, no performance, just me. Just dinner. That's all I'm asking." Eleanor should have said no, should have told him to leave and never come back. But something in his eyes, something raw and uncertain, made her hesitate. Why? Because I want to understand what it feels like to be normal, to sit in a restaurant and eat food and talk to someone who isn't afraid of me, just once a week. Please. The please did it. Eleanor had never heard that word from him before. Fine. Wednesdays. 8 p.m. You're late? You don't eat. Dante's face broke into a smile. A real one this time. Deal. And that's how the strangest weekly ritual in Busan began. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m., Dante arrived. Alone, as promised. He'd sit at the same table by the window. Eleanor would cook whatever she wanted, sometimes traditional, sometimes experimental, sometimes just simple comfort food when she was tired. They didn't talk much at first. He'd eat. She'd watch from the kitchen, he'd pay and leave. But gradually words started creeping in. "This is incredible," he'd say about a dish. "My grandmother's recipe," she'd reply. "Tell me about her." And slowly, carefully, Eleanor began to share pieces of herself. Her childhood, her parents' death, the years of grief. How cooking became her way of staying connected to the people she'd lost. Dante listened, really listened, and eventually he started sharing too. "I was 8 when my parents died," he said one Wednesday, staring at his bowl. "Murder-suicide. My father owed money to bad people. They came to collect. My mother tried to protect me. She died. My father killed himself rather than face what was coming. I hid in a closet and listened to all of it." Eleanor's breath caught. "I spent the next 10 years learning that the world respects 2 things, strength and fear. Love makes you weak. Trust makes you vulnerable. Kindness gets you killed. So I became strong. I became feared. And I promised myself I'd never be that helpless child again." He looked up at her. "And then you happened. You with your broken plate and your loud mouth and your complete lack of fear. And I realized I don't know anything." The weeks passed. Wednesday nights became sacred. Dante would arrive earlier, help her prep. They'd cook together, moving around each other in the small kitchen like they'd done it for years. They'd argue about stupid things, whether garlic should be minced or pressed, whether cats or dogs were better, whether action movies or dramas were superior. They laughed. Actually laughed. Dante's whole face would transform when he smiled, and Elena found herself cooking things just to see that transformation. But the outside world doesn't let fairy tales bloom unopposed. One Wednesday, Dante didn't show. 8 o'clock came and went. 9. 10. By 11, Elena was pacing. By midnight, she was terrified. She called his emergency number. A cold voice answered. "Mr. Choi is unavailable." "Is he okay?" "Mr. Choi is unavailable." The line went dead. Eleanor didn't sleep. She imagined every terrible thing: assassination, betrayal, death. By dawn, she'd convinced herself she'd never see him again. Then at 6 a.m., there was a knock. Dante stood in her doorway looking like he'd been through hell. Bruised face, missing suit jacket, dried blood on his collar. "I'm sorry," he said. "Something came up. Are you hurt?" "Nothing serious." "That's not what I asked." He smiled tiredly. "Can I come in?" Elena stepped aside and Dante walked into her apartment for the first time. It was small and cluttered and the opposite of his sterile penthouse, but he looked at it like it was the most beautiful place he'd ever seen. "What happened?" "Rivals thought I was getting soft, tried to make a move." He lowered himself onto her couch with a wince. "They were wrong." "Did you kill them?" "Do you want the truth?" "Always." "2 of them, yes." She should be horrified, should ask him to leave, but instead she just said, "Are you safe now?" "For the moment." "Good, I'm making tea. Then you're letting me look at whatever injuries you're pretending aren't serious. Then you're telling me what's really going on." He caught her hand as she moved past. "Something's changed. I'm changing. And it's making me vulnerable in ways I haven't been since I was a child. My enemies sense it. They're testing me. And they're right to be concerned because for the first time in 15 years, I have something to lose." Elena's breath caught. "What?" "You. This. Wednesday nights and honest conversations and the way you look at me like I'm a person instead of a monster. I have something to lose, Elena. And that terrifies me. Subscribe right now if you want to see where this impossible love story goes, because what comes next will absolutely destroy you in the best way." Elena sat back down. "I'm not a prize to be won or lost. I know. And I'm not your redemption. I know that too. But I am your friend, and friends don't run when things get complicated." She squeezed his hand. "So let me help. Whatever's coming, let me carry it with you." Dante looked at her with wonder mixed with fear, mixed with something that might have been love. "You can't fight my battles." "No, but I can feed you before them and patch you up after them and remind you why you're fighting." She pulled him up. "Come on, let me see those injuries." She became a different kind of caretaker that night, cleaned his wounds, wrapped his bruised ribs, made him tea strong enough to wake the dead. And Dante let her. Let himself be vulnerable, let himself be cared for. It was more intimate than any kiss. As dawn broke, they sat on her tiny balcony, watching the city wake up. "I have to make a choice," Dante said quietly, "about what kind of leader I want to be. My organization is built on old foundations: fear, violence, control. But there are other ways. Less bloodshed, more legitimate business. It's risky. The old guard sees it as weakness." "What do you see?" "I don't know anymore. I used to think power meant domination. Now I wonder if real power is quieter. What happens if you try to change? Civil war, probably. Half my organization would see it as betrayal. Rivals would move in. I might not survive it. And if you don't try, then I stay exactly what I am. The Frost King. Powerful but alone. Feared but never." He trailed off. "Never loved," Elena finished softly. "Does that matter? In every world, love is a risk. But it's also the only thing that makes existence bearable." She turned to him. "You can't control whether people love you, but you can control whether you're worthy of it." The words hit him hard. He was quiet for so long, Elena thought she'd offended him. "If I do this, if I try to change, it might destroy me, literally." "I know. And you'd still want me to try?" "I'd want you to be able to look in the mirror without flinching. Whether that means trying to change or accepting what you are, that's your choice. But whatever you decide, I'll still be here on Wednesday nights." Dante took her hand and pressed it over his heart. She could feel it beating, fast, strong, alive. "I think I might be in love with you," he said. Not a declaration, just a fact. Eleanor's breath caught. "I think I might be in love with you too. And I have no idea what to do about it." "Neither do I." They sat in the growing light, hands joined, hearts exposed, and didn't say anything else. Over the next 2 months, Dante began the dangerous work of reform. Started small, ending protection rackets against struggling businesses, shifting into legitimate ventures, reducing violence. It was glacial progress, met with resistance. Eleanor watched him transform. Not overnight, but in small ways. Less tension in his shoulders, more genuine smiles, talking about his work with satisfaction instead of just pride in dominance. But transformation has a cost. The first real attempt came on a Wednesday. Dante arrived 30 minutes late, blood seeping through his shirt from a knife wound. Elena locked the door immediately. "Hospital! Now!" "It looks worse than it is." "Dante, please, just give me a minute. Let me catch my breath, then I'll decide." She wanted to argue, wanted to force him into her car. But she saw the fear in his eyes. Not of death, but that this would make her walk away. So she helped him upstairs, cleaned the wound deep but not fatal, wrapped it with shaking hands, and sat with him. "This is going to keep happening," Dante said. "The attempts, the violence. You could get caught in the crossfire." "I know. And you're not running. I told you, I don't run from fire." Something in Dante's expression shifted. He pulled her closer until she was pressed against him despite his injury. "I need to ask you something. Really think before you answer." "Okay. If I survive this, if I manage to change without getting killed, I'm going to want things I've never wanted. Stability, peace, something like a normal life." He paused. "And I'm going to want to build that with you, not as a fantasy, as partners. Real partners." Elena's heart hammered. "Dante, let me finish. I know I'm damaged. I know I'm dangerous. I know I'll never be fully clean. But you make me want to be better. You make me believe better is possible. And if there's even a chance we could have something real, something built on truth and equal footing, I want to take it." He squeezed her hand. "But only if you want it too. Only if you're willing to risk loving someone who might not survive the year. Only if you can look at me, all of me, the darkness included, and still think there's something worth holding on to." Eleanor was crying. You're asking if I'll be your partner. I'm asking if you'll let me try to be worthy of you. That's not how it works. You don't become worthy and then get rewarded with love. You accept love, and that acceptance makes you want to be worthy. They happen together. So, is that a yes? It's a yes with conditions. Name them. 1. You don't lie to me. Ever. I get honesty. Always. Done. 2. You don't make decisions about my safety without me. We decide together. Agreed. 3. You keep trying, keep changing, because I'm not in love with your power. I'm in love with the man who sits at my table on Wednesdays and wants to be better. Dante pulled her fully against him despite the pain. I promise, he whispered into her hair. All 3. I promise. They held each other as night deepened, 2 broken people trying to build something beautiful from their shattered pieces. 6 months later, everything came to a head. Dante's reforms had fractured his organization. The tension had been building for weeks. Everyone knew the breaking point was coming. It came on a Tuesday. Elena was closing when Marcus burst through the door, bleeding from a head wound, breathing hard. You need to come. Now. What happened? Where's Dante? Coup. The old guard made their move. They have him trapped. It's bad, Elena. Every instinct screamed to run the other way. This wasn't her world. What could she possibly do? But then she remembered Dante's face when he'd asked her to be his partner, remembered every Wednesday, every honest conversation, every vulnerable moment. Partners don't run. Take me to him. The warehouse was chaos. Gunfire echoed, men shouted and died, and somewhere in the middle Dante was fighting for his life. Marcus got her close. She could see Dante through gaps in the machinery, surrounded, bleeding, still standing but barely. Eleanor did something completely insane. She walked into the middle of the battlefield. Stop! And, miracle of miracles, they stopped. Guns lowered, men turned. Elena walked straight to Dante, eyes never leaving his face. Are you okay? What are you doing here? His voice was hoarse. You need to leave. Not without you. She turned to face his enemies. You're going to let us walk out. All of us. No more fighting tonight. Someone laughed. And why would we do that? Because if you kill him, you might win a battle, but you'll lose the war. Not against his followers, against change, against the reality that the old ways are dying whether you want them to or not. She gestured at Dante. This man is trying to build something that lasts. Something that doesn't need constant violence. You're so terrified of what that means for your power that you'd rather destroy him than let him try. But here's the truth. You're already destroyed. You're dinosaurs watching the asteroid fall. Silence. Then, from the back, one man lowered his gun, then another, several more. The coup leader, Victor, stared at Eleanor with hatred and respect. You have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe. But I know what I see. A man trying to become better, and men too scared to follow. She stepped closer to Dante, taking his hand. Kill us both. Or let us go and wonder if you backed the wrong side of history. Victor studied them. Then he spat and turned away. Get out. Both of you. 48 hours to convince me your new way is worth keeping you alive. After that, no mercy. Marcus helped Dante limp out, Elena on his other side. 3 blocks away, Dante's legs gave out and he collapsed against a wall. Hospital, Elena said firmly. You're the most terrifying person I've ever met, Dante said, words slurring. I learned from the best. Dante survived. 3 surgeries, 2 weeks in the hospital. And while he recovered, the split in his organization resolved itself. The old guard left. New leadership emerged. By the time he was released, the civil war was over. And he'd won without firing another shot. Elena visited every day, brought food, sat with him, made him laugh even when it hurt. Somewhere in those quiet hospital days, their relationship shifted from complicated to simple. Love. Just love. 3 months later, on a Wednesday night in winter, Dante showed up with snow in his hair and determination in his eyes. Close early. I have customers. Eleanor, please. Something in his voice made her listen. She closed up and followed him outside into the snowy streets. He led her to the park where they'd once walked after a long Wednesday dinner. The city was quiet, blanketed in white, beautiful. And then Dante knelt. Right there in the snow, in full view of anyone watching, the Frost King knelt. I'm not good at this, he said, looking up at her, but I need to say it anyway. I love you, Elena Park. I love your courage and your kindness, and your complete inability to see barriers everyone else considers uncrossable. I love that you called me a coward when we met and somehow turned me into someone brave enough to deserve you. Eleanor was crying, tears freezing on her cheeks. I can't promise perfection or safety or any of the things you deserve, but I can promise partnership, honesty, that every single day I will work to be worthy of the faith you've placed in me. He pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, honest. I'm not asking you to be my possession or prize. I'm asking you to be my partner, my equal, the person who stands beside me and tells me when I'm being an idiot and challenges me to be better. Will you? Will you stand with me? Will you let me spend my life trying to deserve you? Eleanor dropped to her knees so they were eye to eye. Yes, 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 yes. Not because you need to deserve me, because we deserve each other. Because we're both broken people who somehow fit our jagged edges together. Because love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And I choose you, Dante. Every day. Especially the days you drive me crazy. They kissed in the falling snow, two impossible people finding impossible happiness. 6 months later, they married in Phoenix Kitchen. Small ceremony, closest friends, good food, vows that made everyone cry. Marcus gave a speech that was both threatening and touching. To the woman who tamed the Frost King, may your marriage be as resilient as you are, and may Dante always remember you can kill him in his sleep if he disappoints you. Everyone laughed. They danced to an old Korean ballad Elena's grandmother used to sing. As they swayed together, Dante whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for becoming someone worth not giving up on." Phoenix Kitchen thrived. Dante's organization transformed. They had arguments and disagreements and days they drove each other crazy, but they also had Wednesday dinners and lazy mornings and the kind of deep partnership that made them both better. 1 year later, Eleanor stood in her expanded kitchen and thought about how strange life was. A broken plate led to threats, to defiance, to transformation, to love. Her grandmother was right about fire. It didn't just destroy, it forged. It created something stronger. The door opened and Dante walked in with snow on his shoulders. "How was your day?" "Long, boring, full of spreadsheets." He grinned. "Never thought I'd miss crime, but here we are." "Poor baby. Want me to threaten you with a knife for old time's sake?" "Only if you kiss me after." "Deal." In that moment, in that small restaurant, two people who should never have worked proved that the best love stories are the ones that make no sense at all. Because sense is overrated. But courage is everything. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs to hear that love can bloom in impossible places. Subscribe because there are more stories waiting. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for believing that even Frost Kings can thaw. Thank you for understanding that sometimes the bravest thing is standing your ground and refusing to let the world make you smaller. Now go be someone's Elena Park. Be the fire that won't be extinguished.